changed, Eric. It's finally allowing misinformation, which makes no sense, of course. Why would you all of a sudden allow lies if you believe them to be lies? I guess. I mean, if this were real, Eric, that would mean that the lies no longer can hurt if you're talking about the 2020 election. But we all know why they actually did it. They didn't want people to get the information that they didn't want them to get at the time. So you couldn't question the validity of the voting process. You couldn't question the votes themselves. You couldn't say what the Democrats actually said in the 2016 election. They wanted to recount. You couldn't say what Stacey Abrams has said twice now. You couldn't say a lot of stuff. I'm not sure if you're allowed to say it yet, but they did announce that they're addressing the policy here, and we can go right to the YouTube blog itself.
Also, though, how do they? I think we can be certain that they're going to manipulate the language because it's only a certain way you say it, right? Like if Hillary Clinton can go out there for years now and continue to say, "Oh, this president is illegitimate," that doesn't really constitute a fault. Like, they're very good at manipulating the language, so we don't know where the line was actually being drawn, right? Like, they just from their point of view, they just from their ivory tower, they say, well, you can now lie. Like, what? So they're now giving you permission. This is very similar to what we saw with Rona as well. Like, oh, you can go outside without your mask now. Like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, you guys are completely despicable. But I'm getting beside the point. Also, what's going on with Gitter, dude? Maybe we can tie that in later. I don't know how that happened. That's news to me, but we can look at.
I don't know. We were averaging between 1 to 2,000 viewers per episode on Getter. Then it started going a couple months ago. It started going down to averaging 1 to 300 people a podcast on Getter, and then last week it was 11. Okay, not that Getter's pays us in any way. We don't make any money off of this except for the odd YouTube thing, and then super chats, of course. And Spotify, we don't get anything from the ads on there, even though we're partnered with Spotify. I don't understand. But the point is, Getter, it's weird. I don't know if we were being pushed up earlier and now they're not. I have some ideas that I can't share on here as to what's happened there, but I guess they're not listening. We used to be the number one podcast on Getter, okay, but now we're not. So YouTube says, we first instituted a provision in our elections misinformation policy focused on the integrity of the past U.S. election in December 2020, once the state's safe harbor date for certification had passed. 2 years, tens of thousands of video removals, and one election cycle later, we recognized it was time to reevaluate the effects of this policy in today's changed landscape. In the current environment, we find that while removing this content does curb some misinformation, it could also have the unintended effect of curtailing political speech without meaningfully reducing the risk of violence and real-world harm. So, obviously, that's complete nonsense, Eric. You mean it took you 3.5 years, let's say, at least, to realize that removing people for questioning an election is harmful? What did they say? An unintended effect of curtailing political speech without meaningfully reducing the risk of violence. Yeah, no shit. I mean, like, and all of a sudden we've just decided we've brought in much smarter people 3 years later, and all of a sudden we just realize this. I'll read a bit more, then Eric will ask you what you think. With that in mind, and with 2024 campaigns well underway, we will stop removing content that advances false claims that widespread fraud, errors, or glitches occurred in the 2020 and other past U.S. presidential elections. This goes into effect today. Okay, so we are in the safe zone now as of Friday, June 2nd. As with any update to our policies, we carefully deliberated this change. Before we get to the rest, Eric, would I be correct, in your opinion, in assuming that they think that it's no longer, like, nothing's going to happen now with the 2020 election, so it's fine, you can say whatever you want about that, but you damn better not say anything about the 2024 election?
No, well, first of all, this is so eerily similar to the Rona propaganda, right? They come out and say, oh, well, there was articles. You remember there was an article that said some health officials should admit that we were wrong. They were not wrong about any of this. They're not saying like, oh, we're looking back and we're going to fix it. No, that was all by design, very clearly. And now I guess they want you to give you the illusion of free speech, maybe because there's some competition in the market. I don't know. Maybe Rumble's doing well. All these weirdo, or I shouldn't say weirdo, but these like new young like Twitch streamers and Kick streamers are coming out. So I don't know. Maybe they're realizing that they're overbearing, you know, their agenda, their narratives are starting to, or have been for many years now, actually really turning people off. They can probably look at a company like, I don't know, Bud Light or Target, how they're going through all this stuff, which of course is a different issue, but they can kind of see that people are going to eventually start pushing back. So maybe they want to pretend that they're going to let you say whatever it is that you want. And this also reminds me of, there was a point in time when I never thought, or I thought that we would never see the end of these little notifications, these little flags. Remember when people were talking in code? Remember how Huey Media notoriously was butchering these posts that he was trying to make and putting all these little
Yeah.
emojis so that it wouldn't get the notice about the the forced pharmaceutical. I still don't know, what you can say. I had a video removed for discussing the forced pharmaceutical. But so I thought that day would never come, but now it seems that that's here. And they didn't make Instagram, Facebook didn't make an announcement about that. So they still have this post is lacking context, or fact checkers say this is wrong, but you can now post a screenshot of an article about, say, Jamie Foxx, for instance, and it's not going to tell you, um, you know, C19 pharmaceuticals are safe and effective. Don't you ever question this? So maybe this is real. Maybe it's real and the time has finally come to where they can actually see the light. Or maybe it's just another manipulation tactic to trick people into thinking they can say whatever it is they want, and then they'll make it really vague. You have to read the fine print, and they'll make it really vague, and they're like, "Oh well, yeah, but we said you couldn't do it on days that end in Y," or something stupid like that. You never know with these people. You can't trust them.
Well, think it's interesting that nobody ever made a competitor to Instagram the way Rumble has made it to YouTube and Twitter and Truth, or Twitter had Truth and Getter. Getter's attempted to do, shorts and reels. They called it Vision first, and they changed to G Talk, which is obviously, I mean,
It sounds
not
like
the best
Google.
name. And you can't even see view counts on there. So it's odd that nobody has tried to do the equivalent to Instagram, I think. I mean, it's just, I'm sure there's one that exists that the kids are using, but I'm not aware of any. And
Well, I think
Meta's not going to back down from that field at all if they don't have any competition, which is I think was your first point there, that YouTube is losing market share to Rumble. I mean, there's so many people. I mean, for Dana White to bring Power Slap, as stupid and fun as it is, to bring that directly to Rumble and live stream there, and if they're not lying, got 1 million views on their last event in the first 24 hours, then that's a big slap in the face, no pun intended, to YouTube. And hey, look, maybe YouTube says we can make enough money by doing things internationally and doing children's content and gaming content, and we'll be completely fine. Now, YouTube has notoriously lost money, so they probably don't exactly care about what they're doing, other than, creating this aura that they are the place for platformers. So I don't know if there is an actual goal to make money there, just like there wasn't in Twitter. But it's strange that they have so much focus on, what you can post on there when they don't actually care about money.
yeah,
So
and
why do they care about pushing children stuff and gaming stuff if they don't actually care about money? Do they put a person in charge of gaming and be like, go for it? And of course he's like, I have a great job. I'm in charge of gaming at YouTube, and we're going to do the best we can. Whereas we have a person who's in charge of, whatever this is called, the policy and misinformation and politics. And they're just like, well, it's not about making money for us. Our goal in this department is actually about, censoring things and taking off misinformation and evil things and transphobia and BIPOC phobia.
well, their whole thing is to, of course, maintain the narrative but control the children. So yeah, gaming can be a huge marketplace, and they'll make a little bit of money, but money's not the bottom line. And I've said that for a really long time actually, and it's not until more recently that you see these clips going viral of people talking about these DEI scores and how BlackRock is forcing these corporations to do things that they don't want, because it's, yes, it is about money. Like they're going to be fine. Money wise, they're going to be just fine. We're talking about billion-dollar corporations. But in the grand scheme, money is secondary to controlling the narrative. And I think to your point about Instagram and not having a competitor or an imitator, I think that's basically because they've taken aspects of every other social media and turned it into Instagram. So they're just taking bits from, I mean, do you remember a time when Instagram didn't have stories, right? And they had to steal that from, I get, was it Snapchat, I guess?
Snapchat, yeah.
And then they did, so they, and now they have the little things that are kind of like tweets, right? You can put your little thoughts up on the thing. So that, I think maybe that's why they don't have a competitor, is because they've just taken bits of pieces of every single thing and tried to turn it into their own. And last thing, if YouTube were serious about this, they would bring back the dislike button. And then we would see. Then we would see. Then you can look at The Little Mermaid. Then you can look at every Joe Biden speech. Then you can look at Kamala Harris. You can look at John Fetterman. You can look at all of it. Because no matter how hard they try, YouTube is still, even in 2023, no matter how hard they try, YouTube is still dominated by common sense. Look at the comments. Think about all the outlandish nonsense that companies and that woke lefties and weirdos put on there. If you go to the comment section, if they haven't turned them off, there will undoubtedly be dozens, if not hundreds of people calling them out.
Well, it's really swung on the other platforms as well, and it's funny that you bring that up because people forget how this stuff actually came about. People forget that YouTube took away its dislike button because people were not watching Joe Biden's speech and they disliked it into oblivion. People forget that Rotten Tomatoes, they will forget Rotten Tomatoes is changing its thing for The Little Mermaid. People forget that Netflix changed their thing because of Amy Schumer being disliked. Um, and I feel like Rotten Tomatoes did a change previously for another movie, but I can't recall that. But
Avengers or some like superhero
I
movie or something.
can't
I don't know. I
recall.
don't know.
I know it was something, but these platforms, they take away your ability to, discredit something because it makes the platform look bad. If somebody says, um, I put something up on this platform and everybody hated it, well, that's going to discourage them from using that again. And of course, there is the narrative that they want to drive. With YouTube, it's, oh, everybody actually loves Joe Biden. With Netflix, it's like, we paid Amy Schumer X millions of dollars and everybody hates her. Well, that's not good. Like, they don't want their own stuff to look bad. And Amy Schumer's a great example because
And they
she
don't
was
want people.
terrible.
They don't want people they
Mhm.
don't like to look good. They don't want people to know that everybody still likes Dave Chappelle, and they want you to think that, oh, everybody, oh, he's a transphobic bigot. It's like, no, everybody still loves Dave Chappelle. They're still screaming out, "I'm rich," you know what I mean? It's like, dude, it's all fake.
So, a little bit more on YouTube here. This specific aspect of our elections misinformation policy represents just one piece of a broad, holistic approach, which is an
Buzzword.
odd, yeah, very odd word to use there, towards supporting elections on YouTube. Here's what isn't changing. Here's what I don't get, Eric, is just let them post what they want. Put an age warning on it if it's got nudity, swearing, whatever you want, the stuff that already exists. But people lying, like, I don't care if under every single video there is a disclaimer. If you're a political channel or whatever channel, it could apply to everything. That's the problem, is this information may not be accurate. You will have to do your own research. You could do that for a gaming channel. What if IGN, who has been paid, and tons of people who've been paid to give things reviews, which of course sways their opinion, this person has been paid for this. You might not get the accurate information. It works for everything, but for politics, they think it, because it has a particular real world implication, that people want to speak for themselves and think for themselves, that it's a problem. And why would you think it's a problem? You don't think it's a problem because you think the people are getting information that agrees with you. You think that it's a problem because people are getting, in your mind, the wrong information that actually disagrees with you. And whether you think it's true or false, it's only going to happen when the people disagree with you. And this is the leftist world, and we saw it right after Trump won, where Breitbart came out with a report that was the internal meeting with YouTube, where they were just crying and they were insane. And the guy, I forget his name, I don't know if it was Arjeet Pai at the time or whoever it was, but they were just saying, "Oh, we're making big changes to make sure this sort of stuff doesn't happen again." They all talked about it, and they just hope you forget about it.
They
They hope
wrote
you
an
forget.
article about it in Time magazine of how they took over control, right? Don't forget about that. The secret cabal that fortified the election.
Yep, election fortification. They hate for you to remember why they actually did this stuff and what they were saying while they were doing it. Just like the lockdowns, they don't want you to remember what they did. They don't want you to remember how they said that you were the problem if you didn't have the vitamin C, that you were risking people's lives and it's time to do something about the people who ate the gummy bears or who didn't want to eat the gummy bears, excuse me. And they didn't want you to see the uptick on people
Jamie
um
Foxx.
people kissing the grass in soccer games, for example.
Okay.
See, I'm better at this than YouTube is. We
Wait,
are
also
ensuring
though, hang on. Can
okay.
we just also remember that there's a point in time when you had people like what maybe Joy Reid or Brian Stelter when they, and I think shout out, I think it was Media Research Center or maybe the Western Journal, somebody, or is it Grabian? They do these great compilations of the mainstream media people that is different from YouTube. I totally understand, but it is sort of a correlation where they strung together this 4 or 5 minute clip of them basically ridiculing people for doing their own research. Like, just like, oh, these people want to do their own research. Like, how dare they not just swallow exactly what we're giving them at every single point in time? So I think it's all tied in together. But I guess I was just trying to connect that to what you were saying about how they don't want you to get the information that obviously they're not going to give you. Fredo Cuomo, the classic example, right? We all remember the Hillary emails, but it's things like that. Like, these people are doing their own research, and under the guise of doing their own research, it's like, yeah, dude, you guys had it. You had the monopoly. Maybe I'd say the monopoly started to crumble around the advent of Twitter, whatever, 2010, 2011. And then they started to realize that they are no longer the gatekeepers of all information, because there was a point in time before YouTube, before Twitter, where basically everything came through a heavily regulated news outlet, like the big three things. And those days, those days are quite obviously long gone. And this is the war that has resulted in that.
And then they became anti-Semitic. We are ensuring that when people come to YouTube looking for news and information about elections, they see content from authoritative sources. Again, they don't want
There
you to
you go.
remember that authoritative sources actually means we have chosen about a dozen news outlets and they will appear first because we've decided that they're the best. That's literally what it is. Just like gender affirming care, when you put it into layman's terms, hey, YouTube person, what does authoritative sources means? Well, it means that we put the most trustworthy and reliable news networks to the top of the list artificially so that you can trust the information that you are getting. So that means you've chosen what you believe to be places that are right and you give them special treatment. Well, no, that's what it be. Prominent so they appear prominently in search and recommendations. And this all happened in 2019. At the end of 2019, you used to see all these clip channels and then they'd get tanked. Following the 2020 US election, we found that videos from authoritative sources like news outlets represented the most viewed and most recommended election videos
Yeah,
on
because
YouTube.
you set it up that way.
Like,
Like,
how is that even a point, right? Our 2020 election information panels with relevant context from voting locations to live election results were collectively shown over 4.5 billion times. All of our election misinformation policies remain in place, including those that disallow content aiming to mislead voters about the time, place, means, or eligibility. I mean, that's a different
it's all
story.
just jargon. It's all jargon.
But
Now, it's all
I would
absolute
still
nonsense.
allow it. Like, if somebody doesn't want to find out from the official source where their election voting, if you don't get voting cards where you are, you can't go onto the city website, or you can't see the signs. I don't know about how where you guys live, but there's 50,000 signs of vote here. Then I'm sorry, people are going to lie to you. You can't protect people from lying to you.
Turn it up, Jordan.